Brother, let me say something that might sting, but if you're man enough to sit with, it'll set you free. This isn't a soft truth, it's a sharp one. The kind most men spend their whole lives avoiding, but inside it is the key to everything you've been searching for. Introduction. Why understanding your mother truly matters. It's about your mother. Yes, your mother. The woman who gave you life. The woman whose presence or absence shaped how you see yourself, others, and the world. Until you come to terms with this truth, healing will only ever be surface deep, because the journey inward always leads back to her. The woman who carried you also carried a story, and inside that story are the roots of your own. We all walk through life with invisible bruises, tender places shaped by words that were never said, hugs we never received, expectations we were never meant to meet. We hide that pain behind our accomplishment, our busy, our success. But in the quiet, when the world turns down its volume, that pain returns not to haunt you, but to invite you to listen. Because true healing starts at the root. And for many of us, that root is our mother. She may have been your hero or your heart. She may have been nurturing or neglected, present or absent, kind or cold. But either way, she left her mark. Some of you carry her warmth in your laughter. Some of you carry her silence in your skin. Some of you carry the weight of her fear like a second spine. And until you understand the shape of her story, you'll keep trying to heal wounds without knowing where they came from. So walk, not toward blame, but toward truth. These aren't answers, they're mirrors. And in each reflection, you'll see not only her, but yourself. Only then can healing become real. Here are 13 revelations, 13 keys that can open the locked doors within you. Key number 1. She gave what she could, and that may never have been enough. This is the beginning. You must face it. Your mother gave you what she had, but what she had might not have been enough. Imagine her not as the woman you needed her to be, but as the child she once was, hurt, lost, aching from her own unmet need. She stepped into motherhood with a heart both full and fractured. Some days she smiled and meant it. Other days the exhaustion silenced her love. She tried to build a life for you from pieces borrowed, broken, sometimes barely held together. But when you build from borrowed bricks, the walls don't always stand. The shelter she created may have leaked, cracked, failed, and you, as a child, believed the failure was yours. It wasn't. Her shortcomings were never proof that you were undeserving. They were proof that she was limited. She may have lacked the emotional tool, the financial stability, the spiritual grounding, the education, the support, or all of it. She may have worked herself into emptiness to keep the lights on, and still had nothing left to comfort you. Or maybe she lived in survival mode, haunted by ghosts you never saw. Her inability to give you what you needed was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of her wound. And maybe she passed those wounds down to you. Anger, perfectionism, anxiety, fear. You learned them like a language. You adopted them like family tradition. You wore them like armor, not knowing they were cages. That armor may have kept you safe, but it also kept you small. But listen closely. You are not broken beyond repair. You inherited pain, yes, but you also inherited resilience. You grew from a soil filled with struggle, and you bloomed anyway. Your strength didn't come from her perfection. It came from her persistence. You built something from the very foundation that nearly crushed. You turned her gaps into your growth, her pain into your purpose. Each time you choose compassion over bitterness, self-worth over self-blame, you honor both yourself and her. Because forgiveness does not erase pain, it reclaims. It means saying, you did what you could, and I needed more, and I will give myself the more I need. Key number 2. The absence you felt was never about your Maybe remember the hollow moment, the empty chair, the unanswered call, the silence when you needed sound, the weariness in her eyes when you dared to cry. So you stopped crying, stopped asking, stopped needing. You learned that your emotions were a burden. You learned to shrink your sadness, silence your fear. And in doing so, you learned to disappear. But let's get something clear. You were never meant to carry that alone. That silence was never your fault. Her absence wasn't a verdict on your value. It was her survival mechanism, and that changes everything. When you stop seeing her absence as rejection and start seeing it as her inability, you stop asking why you weren't enough and begin realizing she simply didn't know how. Key number 3. She taught you through her wounds, not just her wisdom. She didn't just pass down wisdom. She passed down wounds, unintentional lessons carved from pain she never meant. And your healing begins when you realize you were shaped not only by what she knew, but by what hurt her. She taught you through her scar. Fingerprints of sorrow pressed invisibly across the windows of your childhood. They blurred your vision of the world before you even had a name. You didn't know it then, but every time she raised her voice or withdrew in heavy silence, every time she clenched her jaw or tried to control what was spinning out of reach, you were learning. She may not have had words of wisdom in those, but her wounds spoke in a language all their own, a language of fear, of tension, of survival. And through that silent language, you learned how to brace, how to shrink your voice, how to tiptoe around someone else's pain like it was glass you could never afford to break. You learned early that love might come in stream, that tenderness might arrive with an edge, that affection could vanish if you asked for too much. And so you carried those silent rules like commandments etched into your bone. Her wounds didn't always scream. They whispered in slammed door, in rushed breakfast, in the sighs that dropped like anchors between. Sometimes they sat beside you at the table, in her tired eye, in the way her mouth tightened, in the silence that held more stories than she could ever tell. You became fluent in her mood, able to sense the storm before it arrived. You learned to soften your presence so she wouldn't crumble. You learned to bury your needs so she wouldn't break. You learned, without anyone telling you, that you needed to become smaller just to survive her pain. These were not teachings of intention. They were echoes of a woman surviving, and still they stuck. They shaped how you understand love, how you approach belonging. They carved your sense of safety. You were taught that other people's pain came before your own. You were taught that love could mean sacrifice, not the kind that grows you, but the kind that erases. It's easy to point to the moments she let you down. Easy to say she should have known better. But pause for a breath and ask who taught her, who showed her how to hold her pain, let alone yours. Maybe she came from silence too, from a home where emotions were punished or ignored. Maybe she learned that crying was weak, that vulnerability was unsafe. Maybe she learned to hide her hurt because no one ever taught her what it meant to feel and be safe. So when she had you, she didn't hand you a map. She handed you the only thing she knew: how to carry wounds with grace, how to survive, how to keep walking when everything inside begged to collapse. Her wounds became your first text, not because she wanted you to read them, but because you had no choice but to absorb them. When a mother bleeds, her child often tastes iron before they know what honey feels like. That's the kind of inheritance that isn't named in will. It's etched into your instincts, in the way you question your worth, flinch at kindness, doubt when someone stays. You learned that love had to be earned, that your presence had to be managed, that your emotions were negotiable, because her wounds taught you that to be loved, you had to be useful, to keep the peace, to fix the mess, to never be too much. She didn't ask you to be her healer, but her wounds made you one. And that's a weight no child was meant to carry. You absorbed her pain, wide-eyed, confused, watching her fall apart and trying to piece together something that made sense. Maybe you comforted her before she comforted. Maybe you stood tall so she wouldn't break. Maybe you smiled through your own sadness so she wouldn't have to see it. Her wounds taught you how to be strong, but not always how to be whole. Taught you how to survive, but not how to receive love without fear. How to give endlessly, but not how to ask for anything in return. Asterisk, her wisdom, when it came, was harder, forged through battles you never saw. It showed up in rare moments, a soft smile on a dark day, a kind word when you needed it most. But even that wisdom carried traces of her pain. It was a wisdom of endurance, not healing. A wisdom born from survival, not healing. You learned to push through pain, but not how to release. You learned how to keep going, but not when to stop and rest. Her wisdom was real, but it was incomplete. And so you grew up bracing for her pain, waiting for the next wave to hit. You became her emotional barometer, the one who kept the storms at bay, that taught you deep compassion. Yes, but it also taught you fear. It made you believe that love comes with walking on eggshells. That peace is earned through self-erasure. Inherited an invisible playbook. Rules like don't upset her, don't need too much, don't let your feelings show. Those rules kept you safe in her world, but they keep you small in yours. Her wounds taught you how to hide, how to anticipate, how to plead. But now you are grown, and you must unlearn those lessons. Because you deserve to take up space. It's tempting to believe the pain was personal, that she meant to hurt you. But pain isn't always deliberate. Sometimes it's passed down like furniture, heavy, inherited, and never examined. She may have believed she was protecting you from the world, not realizing she was teaching you to protect yourself from her. She may have thought she was guarding you from heartbreak, not realizing she was planting it inside. She may have thought she was teaching you strength when she was teaching you to shut down. That's the paradox. Her intention was love, but the love came wrapped in fear. Her love was real. Her wounds were too dark. And those truths can exist side by side. To hold both is your freedom. Because once you see that you no longer define yourself by what hurts you, you define yourself by what you choose. You have something she didn't, a choice. You can learn from her wound without living. You can honor her suffering without becoming it. You can say, she taught me to be strong, but I will also learn softness. She taught me to survive, but I will now learn thrive. Her wounds shaped you, but they don't have to define you. That's the gift she never knew she gave, the choice to transform. You can build a life that honors her love while healing from her pain. Healing doesn't mean forgetting where you came from. It means transforming it into something new. It means saying, her wounds taught me, but they do not define me. And in that sentence, your freedom begins. Key number 4. She might have loved the only way she knew how, even if it hurt. The love she gave you was shaped by the only kind she'd ever known, formed by the world that raised, a world that didn't always teach softness, a world that told her love meant survival. Her love may have stung, may have felt more like pressure, but to her it was still love, a rough, uncut diamond she never learned how to polish. She didn't know how to offer gently because it was never offered. She may have believed love was sacrifice giving until she had nothing left, holding tight even. She might have thought love was something earned for fragile, always at risk of slipping through her fingers. So when she loved you through the only lens she had. A lens shaded by fear, distance, and expectation. She loved defensively, believing she needed to be hard to stay home. believing that protecting herself was part of protecting. Her love may have come with terms you couldn't always understand, standards that felt impossible to meet, as though love was a test you were always failing. You may have felt you were running a race she'll never let you finish, but maybe, just maybe, she was giving you what she had been taught, passing down a version of love that was both a gift and a burden. Sometimes her love felt like a storm lightning in her words, thunder in her silence, and you standing in its wet trembling. She may have tried to harden your heart, to shield it, teaching you to fight before you ever learned to trust. She might have taught you that vulnerability was weakness, that tears meant failure, that strength was measured by silence. But beneath that armor was a woman who didn't know how to love in any other way. She believed her love was building you, even when it was breaking. She thought she was preparing you for a world that mirrored her pain. Her love wasn't gentle because life hadn't been gentle. She may have wrapped her love in condition, obedience, achievement, approval. You may have felt praised when you met her ideals and punished with distance when you didn't. You might have learned to chase her love, to perform, to prove yourself worthy. But in her eyes, this was guidance, this was protection, this was love. She believed molding you was a mother's duty. That pressure was a sign of care. And sometimes her love looked like sacrifice, late night, double shift, dreams folded away for your sake. By those sacrifices came with reminders, guilt wrapped around your success, as if her giving meant you owed her some. Maybe she reminded you of what she gave up, especially when you failed, especially when you wanted something more. Maybe her love felt like a ledger, and your joy was shadowed by debt. But still behind that sacrifice was a woman who believed love meant giving everything. She thought exhaustion proved devotion. She thought the weight she carried was the currency of her love. Her love might have comforted and wounded in the same breath. Maybe she held your hand when you were sick, but cut you down with her words when you needed gentle. Maybe she told you she loved you, but never taught you how to love herself. That's a brutal contradiction, needing comfort from the same hands that once hurt you. But maybe she couldn't untangle her pain from her parent. Maybe she thought love meant making you tough, teaching you to hide your heart to survive the world. Her love may have been intense but flawed. It tried to protect even as it pierced. There were times it felt like control and insistent that you fit into her shape, that you become who she needed you to be. Maybe she feared your dream, your difference, your path. Maybe she didn't know how to let go, how to trust you'd be okay on your own. So she clung, so she criticized, so she controlled and called it love. That kind of love can feel suffocating, but underneath it was fear, the fear of losing, the fear of you becoming too big to hold. She might have loved you desperately, so desperately, that she never learned to loosen her grip, even if it hurt. It was still the only love she knew how to offer. Maybe her love was wrapped in silence, a quiet that echoed like abandonment. Maybe she never said, "I'm proud," even when her heart was bursting. Maybe her love was packed into small acts, folded laundry, packed lunches, staying up late to make sure you were okay. Even if her silence stung, it was still her way of saying, "I care." The only way she knew how. Her love might have come out in anger, harsh words, short tempers, emotions she couldn't contain. Not because she hated, but because she didn't know how to carry her pain any longer. Her anger might have been love in disguise, misguided, loud, confusing. It may have felt like rejection, but maybe it was the only way she knew to reach. Sheer believed pressure would make you strong, even when it made you. Maybe her love didn't meet your need. Maybe it left scar. Maybe you still carry question. Was I ever enough? Was that love real? But even in its imperfection, it was. but still love. A love shaped by her story, by her wound, she may have offered you the only love she had, even if it wasn't the love you hoped, even if it left you aching. And maybe that's where healing begins. Not in pretending it didn't hurt, but in seeing it for what it was. A love that tried even when it failed. A love that broke you even as it wanted to protect. A love that hurt but still was love. And maybe, just maybe, that's where forgiveness can start. Not to excuse it, but to release the hold it has on your soul. Forgiving her, forgiving yourself, and slowly learning what love should feel like now. Key number 5. Her fears become your inheritance, but you can choose to break the chain. Her fears become your inheritance, quiet, without announcement. You didn't question, but now you feel their weight. They didn't begin with you, but somehow they found a home in your mind, in your choices, and now you get to decide whether they end with you. You can trace their shape in the way she hesitated at risk, the way she stayed small in spaces that demanded more. You remember her voice, low and urgent. Are you sure that's safe? Or what will people think? Echoes of fear disguised as protection. You remember how she pulled you back when you were ready to leap forward. Her fear felt like love, but it wrapped itself around your potential like caution tape. She meant to shield you from harm, not from yourself. But over time, her fear settled in your bone, until her voice became the one inside your head, whispering doubts. Each time you dared to be brave, you hear her caution every time your hands tremble, every time your dreams feel too loud. Her fears became your armor, but now that armor feels like a kick. You start noticing the places you've held back, the words you never said, the dreams you shelved, the laughter you swallowed. Her fear taught you to play it safe, to shrink, to stay quiet. And yet, with every bold step you take, you begin to see her fear is not your legacy unless you choose to carry it. You see her in the way you lower your voice, in how you apologize for taking up space, in the ways you diminish yourself. You hear her words leave your mouth, only now you realize how much they kept her, and now keep you small. You glimpse her shadow in your reflection, and in that shadow, the chain you were born into. But you are not her. Her fears were born of her own story, her own unhealed chapter. Maybe they came from her mother and her mother before her, but every chain has a breaking, and maybe that point is you. You can choose a different rhythm. You can move without her fears gripping your ankle. You can be the one who says, "This ends here." You don't have to hate her for what she passed down. You can love her, honor her pain, and still refuse to be defined by it. You can imagine her as the little girl she once was, frightened, uncertain, looking for safety in a world that gave her none. She gave you what she had, but you don't have to carry it forever. You can thank her for her love, and still lay down the fear she didn't mean to give, because what she handed you was inherited, not destined. Her fears are not yours. They are an invitation to choose different, to be bold where she was cautious, to use your own voice, not the echo of hers, to dream bigger, to stand taller, to live louder. Breaking the chain takes courage. It means looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, "I love her, but I will not live afraid." It means giving yourself permission to fall and rise without her fear dragging behind. It means stepping into a life she couldn't imagine, but you can. You can honor her love without living her fear. You can build a life rooted not in protection, but in possibility. Her fear may have shaped your childhood, but it doesn't have to shape your future. Every act of courage you take, every truth you speak, every risk you embrace breaks a link in the chain. And in that breaking, you offer something new to the next generation, not inherited. but chosen freedom. Maybe the greatest love you can give her is to live unafraid, to show her and yourself that the world is not as dangerous as she believed, to live wide open, to trust your voice, to believe in your strength. Her fears were your inheritance, but they never have to be your home. Key number 6. You will never understand her fully, and that's okay there. Are parts of her story you'll never see, chapters she kept to herself, moments that shaped her in silence. And while you might ache to know it all, you must accept that some of her battles were fought behind closed doors. Some of her tears fell when no one was watching, and some of her laughter came from wounds you'll never fully. Not a failure of your relation. That's simply the truth of being human. You can still love her without knowing every detail. You can still make peace without solving every mystery. There will be days when her choices don't align with the mother you needed, when her words or her silence echo too loudly. You may carry questions like stones in your chest, wondering why she couldn't offer you so deeply. But the truth is, she might not have the answers either. She may have been doing her best with tools too dull to shape the love you longed. She wasn't just your mother. She was a woman trying to survive, stitched together by her own losses, her own fear, her own history. To understand her fully might never be possible. Plus, and still you can choose peace in the places where her story is incomplete. Sometime you tell yourself, if I can just understand her, I'll finally heal. If I step into her past, I'll know why she stayed when she should have left, or why she left when I needed her close. But healing doesn't always arrive through explanation. Sometimes it shows up through acceptance. Forgiveness isn't about solving. It's about letting go of the version of her that lives in your expectation. It's about choosing to love what is, not what might have been, because she was never just a mother. She was a mosaic of broken pieces and quiet beauty. Some of those pieces were too fragile to hold, too sharp to touch, and yet they were her. And she gave you what she could from that place. Loving her doesn't mean completing the picture. It means letting it be unfinished, letting her be imperfect. When you stop trying to make sense of it, you breathe again. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. You stop defining yourself by her absence or by her mistake. Her story shaped part of you, but it's not your whole story. You get to write the rest. You can carry her memory with grace, even where it fades. You can honor what she gave you and still heal from what she couldn't, because the key to your freedom was never in her explanation. It's in your acceptance, and that truly is enough. Key number 7. Forgiving her sets you free, even if she never says sorry. You don't forgive her because she earned it. You forgive because you are ready to live. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's not saying what she did was right. It's saying you won't let it define you anymore. There may be a part of you still waiting for the tears in her eye, for the words, "I was wrong," for her to finally see the weight she left on your heart. But what if that moment never comes? What if she never says the words you've longed? Maybe she can't. Maybe she's too broken, too proud, too afraid to look in the mirror of what she's done. And so you wait in the hallway between hurt and healing, trapped by silence, held hostage by a door that may never open. Forgiveness is how you walk out of that room. It's how you choose sunlight over shadow. It's whispering, even if she never sees the depth. I choose to be whole. That's what freedom feels. Forgiving her doesn't erase the scar. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it turns the scar into strength, not a prison, but a reminder that you survived. You rose. You became the hero of your own story. Because forgiveness is the most powerful rebellion against the pain that tried to own you. It's the moment you say, "This chapter will not be my ending." It doesn't mean welcoming her back into all the sacred spaces of your life. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means no longer letting it control what happens next. You take back your voice. You take back your power. You stop waiting for her to heal you and offer yourself the apology you've needed all along. "I'm sorry I let this hurt live inside me for so long." That's the turning point. That's the healing. Key number 8. Her survival wasn't always safe. For you, your mother may have filled her voids with what she had control. Criticism, silence, fear. She tried to protect you with what protected her. But fear-formed protection is still a prison. She thought she was building a shield, but you ended up carrying her shame. And still, that was her doing the best she knew. She was surviving. She just didn't know how to teach you how to thrive. Number 9. Healing isn't about blame. It's about redefinition. You don't have to minimize what you miss. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You just have to let it mean something new. You're not erasing memory. You're rewriting bare meaning. And in doing so, you're reclaiming your power. Forgiveness here isn't surrendering, it's strength. It's choosing to break the cycle rather than be broken by it. Key number 10. You grew. Despite the gaps, she may not have known how to love fully, but you learned. She may not have been there when you needed, but now you can be there for yourself. Healing means building what she couldn't. It means saying, "The story doesn't end with what I lacked. It begins with what I create." Key number 11. Her humanity is part of your inheritance. You don't need her to be perfect. You need to be honest. She tried and she failed. She loved and she hurt. She gave and she withheld. That is her humanity. And accepting it doesn't weaken you. It deepens. It's your inheritance and it's yours to reshape. 12. Healing doesn't happen loudly, won't come with fireworks. It grows slowly, like roots in quiet soil. It happens when you stop chasing love in people who have no more to give. It happens when you turn inward, when you plant your own validation, when you water it with grace. Key number 13. Compassion is the bridge and freedom is on the other side. You may still feel grief. You may still feel the ache of what wasn't, but you are no longer defined by that. Absent. You're defined by your decision to see her effort, to honor her intention, to forgive the rest, and to build a life full of what you never received. That's to work. That's the healing. That's the legacy you're rewriting. So stand on that bridge. It's built from compassion. And on the other side of it, there is freedom, not just for you, but for every generation that follows.